Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Inspirational Interviews with me, Hannah Levin from heartfeltwellbeing.com. And I am so excited for our interview today because it is just what you may need for this time of navigating our national landscape and maybe your internal landscape as well. So today's guest is going to share with us about plants for emotional support and relaxation. I'm going to give a little introduction for our guest, Larabeth Guthrie, and then I'll bring her on here. Before I do that, just a couple reminders that there is yoga going on every day in this group every morning, yoga and more. And join me. It's a great experience to just journey day by day, seeing what a yoga practice can do to support you in response and in alignment with whatever is happening in your life. So 7 a.m. Eastern time, I go live Monday through Friday for yoga. So join me for that. And every Wednesday, we have one of these interviews, inspirational interviews at 4 Eastern Standard Time. So today's guest is Larabeth Guthrie. She is a board certified wellness practitioner with a bachelor's of science in complementary medicine and a master's of public health in functional nutrition. She uses plants, mindfulness, and gentle movement to help clients find healing through balance. Growing up, Larabeth's mother and grandmother impressed upon her the importance of plants as a way to build wellness. At the age of 12, Larabeth had discovered Qigong through her martial arts association and witnessed the power of energy healing. She began to dig deeper into herbalism and Eastern healing practices and went on to become a Reiki master at age 21. Laura is also a Vinyasa yoga instructor with a focus on accessibility and mindfulness. Larabeth is continuing to expand her education through training as an Ayurvedic practitioner and as a PhD candidate in natural medicine. She currently works with the university, actually, it's the UAB's, we'll find out exactly what that is, but it's in Birmingham, Integrative Clinic, to produce research and education around mindfulness practices, yoga, aromatherapy, supplement use, and traditional healing practices. As a multimodal energy healer and instructor with over 15 years of healing experience, she works to make natural health education accessible and available for everyone. So exciting. Here she is.
Hi.
Welcome, Larabeth.
Thank you. It's the University of Alabama at Birmingham. That's
University of Alabama. Oh, okay. So that's the A in there is Alabama. Yeah. Okay. University of Alabama at Birmingham. Yes. And I am fascinated by what you get to do because you're working in the public health sector with integrative medicine and using these alternative healing, well, what we call now alternative healing modalities, like original healing modalities, maybe.
We prefer to call them complementary treatments.
Complementary.
Because, we're using them alongside other things instead of as an alternative in that setting. And of course, I work with private clients and I teach and do all that as well. But I really have gotten to where I enjoy the research that we do. It's really starting to make a big difference down here.
Awesome. Yeah, it's so amazing. When you first told me about that program, I was like, oh my gosh, why isn't that happening everywhere?
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about just herbalism in your life, and then we'll get into specifics for applying to everybody else's life.
Well, so my mother, when I was a child, my mother ended up in a situation where she had this really severe muscle pain. And it was just kind of an all over achy feeling all the time. And it got to the point where she would vacuum the house, which was not a very big house. And then she would have to lay down for the rest of the day because she was in so much pain. And so we already had herbs in the garden and we used some supplements and things. But after the doctors were pretty much like, good luck, we can't do anything for you, she decided that she was going to fix it. And so she went and she, of course, in Florence, Alabama in the late 1980s, like there's nobody there's really nobody to go to. And so she went and found some books and kind of, finagled her way into creating health again for herself. So I had watched that from an early age. And then as I got older, I began to realize that, herbs were very important in many different settings. And then when I had a scenario where I was being abused, and then I was also working 911 dispatch. So there was a lot of trauma and a lot of heavy stress in my life. And I was doing some stuff, but I mean, when you're in that kind of situation, you're more in survival mode than you are really trying to, find your balance and all that. And so I ended up in a situation where the stress was so bad that I had to go to the emergency room. I had a reaction where all of a sudden I was just covered in hives, and they were afraid I was going to go into anaphylactic shock, and they never could figure out what it was. And essentially they were like, your adrenals have failed. We don't know why. Take some prednisone. Good luck.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so that was when I really started to get back into like, how do I modulate my stress levels? Like, how do I bring balance back to my body? What can I be doing? I can't be on this prednisone for the rest of my life because it's just going to keep me messed up. And I managed to find my balance. And I have pretty much since then been like, I've got supplements all in my cabinet. I've got herbs that I grow. I have the things I can't grow here. I get them, in the dried packets from Star West Botanicals and make my teas. And it's just become a part of our everyday life here at my house because it has been such an important thing for both my mother and myself.
Yeah, that's awesome. And really a great illustration. A lot of us that end up in the healing world are here because we're wounded healers, right? We had to heal ourselves before we could recognize our gifts to help others heal. And such a great illustration of that in your story for sure. So let's get into some of the plants that might be really helpful for us right now in this exact moment. What are the like top few plants that like, you're like, okay, we're dealing with this crazy time in the world?
So this is kind of an interesting thing because there are so many options here that it makes it really hard for us to say, we've got 30 minutes and let's talk about it in a way that. So one of the big groups is called nervines. That's spelled Nervines, nervines. And they are essentially a group of herbs that help to support the nervous system. So when somebody is under too much stress, and you'll notice, like, if you've ever been under that level of stress, like you're jumpy as if you haven't had enough sleep. Somebody comes up, they startle you, you jump out of your skin versus normally you just be like, oh no. And so that's when the nervines can come in handy. Lemon balm, valerian, chamomile, lavender, all these different herbs can be very, very helpful. And you find a lot of them in relaxing teas. So this doesn't have to be something where you have to go and buy everything individually and try to blend it together into some form that you like. You can pretty much go to the store and find different relaxing blends and drink those in your, as your tea instead of drinking your coffee and things in the afternoon. And a lot of the times that will start to make a big difference just by itself without having to worry about dosing and all that jazz. Mm-hmm. Another group of herbs is called adaptogens. And you and I were talking about this before we got started. Mm-hmm. Ashwagandha is my absolute hands down favorite adaptogen for people to be using. And there's good ashwagandha supplements everywhere now. You can get it and put it into a tea, but it's kind of got a heavier flavor. So yeah. Unless you've got acquired. Yeah, that's an acquired taste. Yes, because it is the root. Like the ashwagandha that you put in your tea, you're using the root, and so that's always most roots are very earthy and things of that nature. But that is a very good option. There are other adaptogens. Many of the mushrooms, like reishi and shiitake. Well, yeah, I guess that is too. Many of the mushrooms are adaptogens, and so you can use those in a lot of situations. Cordyceps is one that I see a lot of times. Reishi and cordyceps are the two that are kind of like the big front runners. And one way that I like to use those is to get powder. So if you have a good source of where you can go get some of these mushrooms in a powdered form and add them to hot chocolate, so just some cocoa and some of the mushroom powder, and then usually some stevia or something to kind of sweeten it a little bit. Again, a little bit of an acquired taste, but at the same time, it's not horrible, and you'll get used to it really fast and be like, "Oh yeah, okay, I see why people drink this." And then there's kind of a need to get good sleep.
Yeah, kind of.
So yes, just a little bit, and especially when we're under this kind of stress.
Yeah.
So even when you're trying to utilize some of these herbs, cutting out the extra caffeine and maybe bringing in these herbs will help you to get a better night's sleep. So there's all these different pieces that kind of come together. And then, of course, we could talk about essential oils. It's one of those things I could jabber all day.
Right. And then there's the movement and
Yes.
meditation piece and right.
Exactly.
So many things. Well, let's stay focused on plants for now. And I also want to just pause and say, if you're watching this, we've got a little crew here live. Feel free to type in questions that you have for Larabeth, and we can get her to answer your questions. So, so let's go back to the nervines. And so you mentioned mostly tea.
Yes.
So is that what you think in general is a great way for people to interact with those herbs versus tinctures or capsules or what other ways could they take them?
So for those of you who aren't aware, tinctures are an alcoholic extraction. A lot of the times, if you're doing it at home, you might put your herbs into like a brandy to extract the constituents. And then you just take a small amount. You don't drink it as if you were drinking a cup of tea because it's a highly concentrated extraction.
Actually, I have a Brahmi tincture right here.
There you go.
And so, so it's just a dropper. We can demonstrate here, a little dropper, and it fills up like halfway. And then I just put that in my tea or under my tongue.
Yep.
And that's my dose.
Exactly. So it's a little more concentrated. And then you have like your glycerites that you can do that are a sweet version that don't have alcohol in them. And it doesn't mess with your blood sugar because it's the sweet part of fat. And without getting too in depth on that, a lot of the times with nervines, tinctures can be good because they taste good. But then you kind of have the dosing thing. And that's why a lot of the times when I'm encouraging people to try this stuff for the first time before they're working with somebody, really using a tea is a very safe, very gentle way to introduce this kind of stuff to your body. Tinctures usually work really well as well, but a lot of the times I like to encourage people to start with teas just to get a feel for the different tastes and a feel for the actions on their body. Because if you go straight to a tincture and something causes you to nap all afternoon, then you may be like, that's too hard on my body. And then, of course, you can do capsules as well. If you prefer something like a supplement, you can do that. Then you don't get the taste. So some people, if they don't like the taste of things, then you can use the capsule. But then your dosage is just what's in that capsule. You can't play with it. You can't say, I'm going to have 2 cups of tea or I'm going to have half a cup. Or in the case of tinctures, you can do it with drops or, however. With capsule, you just get what you get.
Yeah.
So that's why I start with teas a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's great. And so talk to us about a little bit more of the intricacies of some of the herbs that you mentioned, chamomile, lemon balm, lavender. Yeah. What are each of them kind of geared towards, or how do you know which ones to steer towards for what's coming up for you?
So for people who are just getting started, I encourage you to find stuff based on taste. You can get into a lot of the therapeutic actions if you want, but really just finding things that you like the taste of, finding a blend that you like the taste of is usually going to be a signal that your body is interested in those herbs. So lemon balm is one of my favorite. Of course, the name lemon balm comes from the fact it has a very fruity kind of lemony scent to it. And it also has a bit of a lemony taste in a tea. Lemon balm is one of these things that I like to use at bedtime because it's very, very calming. but I don't necessarily have to immediately go fall asleep from it. Some things there, like skullcap, I mentioned skullcap earlier, that is something that will knock you out pretty quick. Lemon balm, on the other hand, it's like after dinner, kind of winding down. I've got a few more hours. I'm going to sip on it till bedtime. And of course, again, I love the taste. For those of you who are into essential oils, sometimes you'll see an essential oil called Melissa. It's the same plant. The Latin name is Melissa officinalis. So if you see that, you've smelled that, that's the smell of lemon balm. Also, for where I am, it grows very, very rapidly. It's almost like a weed here. In Alabama is where I'm at. I'm in the 7A, 7B category for the USD. For those of you who are gardeners, you know what I'm talking about. And so we have just a ton of it. So we get to use it a lot. Valerian is a very, very good one for helping people go to sleep at night. But it is definitely a go to sleep kind of like skullcap. And it smells gross to most people. So when you smell valerian, to me, it smells soured. And most people will tell you it has kind of a sour smell to it. So normally you'll find it in a blend with some other stuff, maybe some peppermint or something that will kind of cover it up and not make it as strong. Chamomile is another one that I like to do in a blend if I'm going to have like an afternoon tea that somebody's just trying to keep their body kind of relaxed throughout the day. You'll see it a lot in sleepy time teas, but it's like lemon balm. It doesn't necessarily knock you out, make you want to go to sleep. And lavender is kind of similar. So lavender essential oil, which is different than just the herb. It's a very highly concentrated form, but the essential oil has been studied for its ability to relax people who maybe don't want to have to go on the really heavy hitting, like lorazepam and things of that nature. So the lavender herb, which again is a little bit different from what they've studied, but the lavender herb is very, very calming and relaxing. And so a lot of the times you'll see like lemon balm, chamomile, and lavender in kind of a combination together. And so a lot of those are kind of interchangeable. A lot of those you can use based on what you like the taste of and what you like the smell of. Because our bodies are a little bit different. Everybody's body is slightly different. I know people that like valerian. They think it smells good, it tastes good, and that's just not something that works for me. And, of course, I'm sure you guys have heard Hannah talk about in Ayurveda, we have different energies that our bodies may lean more towards certain body types and things of that nature. And that's where some of these herbs that might be kind of interchangeable, that's why some people like certain ones and don't like others. So go with if you're just trying to kind of get a feel for it, go for the tastes that you like, go for the smells that you like, and work from there to get yourself a blend that you're pretty crazy about.
Yeah. Awesome. I love that. Like taking the guidance internally versus externally and really being like, does this appeal to me? Right. Like also the tongue, in Ayurveda, we talk about the tongue being the head of the snake of the digestive tract. And it's a gatekeeper. Right. So if something hits the tongue and you're like, right, yeah, it might not be what needs to be coming in your body at the moment. But if it hits your tongue and you're like, oh, yeah. And it might not even be that it tastes good to you, but it feels nourishing to you. Yes. Right. There's some part of your body that's like, yes, please bring that in, Yes. And that makes it so helpful to really tune into that like internal gatekeeper instead of the like, Larabeth said that I need to take this.
Exactly. And one last thing on that before we move on to the next part. If you have never tasted natural things before, don't immediately go, well, I hate all of it. Therefore, try things 3 or 4 times. It's just like when you try food from another country and it has spices in it that you're not accustomed to. A lot of the times, the first time your brain is going to go, this is different, therefore it must be dangerous. Right. And we have to try it 2 or 3 times to get past that initial protection that our brain has. And we have to say, thank you, brain, for keeping us protected, but we're going to try this again. So if you get a couple of different teas to try, then don't immediately assume that because the first time you taste it, you recoil a little bit, that it means you should dislike it. You got to try it 2 or 3 times to really
Good
know.
point. Good point. Yes. Yeah. And in Ayurveda, we have the saying that like increases like. So if we're used to eating a lot of a certain taste, a lot of us do this with sweet taste. If we're used to eating a lot of sweet taste, then we're going to crave sweet taste. And when we taste things that don't have sweet in them, we're going to reject them. But it just means that we haven't diversified our palate enough.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually need a very well diversified palate to be healthy, to have all of the 6 tastes in our diet. I also want to just put a little caveat out there for purchase teas. You had mentioned like you can just, go, and there's some amazing tea companies out there that make really great teas. I do just want to put a little caveat out there. If you have high blood pressure, licorice is used as a sweetener in a lot of teas, and it can elevate your blood pressure. So just know that. I've had several clients that have needed to look at the licorice. Some people aren't affected by it, and some people are like, why is my blood pressure higher? And then they look at their teas, and licorice is an ingredient. And this is different than the candy licorice. This is the plant licorice, but it's sweet. It's a sweet taste. And it's a demulcent, so it's helpful when there's issues of dryness, but it's also can be elevating to the blood pressure. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So, yes, this is true. They have found that. But what we have also found is that if you're just drinking a couple of cups a day, it should not be changing your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
If it is changing your blood pressure, you need to be talking to Hannah or me about the fact that that little amount of a licorice is changing your blood pressure, because normally that means that there's a mineral imbalance and that needs to get back under control. So just be aware that, like, if you are concerned about it, you can try 1 or 2 cups a day. Just don't be drinking like 7 or 8 cups, because the research suggests that it's when you drink like a ton of it that it's where it really becomes a problem for people. And if you are that sensitive that quickly, then it is time for you to be working with a professional to figure out why your body is reacting so strongly to something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point. All right, let's talk about some adaptogens.
Yes.
And kind of get into those options too.
So my favorite, hands down, adaptogen for people to try is ashwagandha. I say this because ashwagandha is one of these that most people like, and it helps them a lot. There are others. So for instance, if you're an athlete, rhodiola could be something that you're taking after workouts to kind of help your body recuperate faster. And of course, Shazandra is really good if somebody is having a lot of adrenal issues, that like what I was dealing with. But ashwagandha is one of these kind of almost umbrella type adaptogens. So I encourage you, if you're going to try an adaptogen to see how it helps your body, try ashwagandha first. The adaptogens are called this because they help your body to adapt to stress. Now, there are some people who will tell you you can't just take adaptogens and expect it to fix everything, because if you're going to do that, you might as well just drink coffee and try to keep yourself going. But the adaptogens are there to help you have a little bit of a cushion while you're also recuperating. So, and I know we've already mentioned this, but I feel like I have to kind of like stress, like, you do these things in a vacuum and nothing's going to change. You do these things and you come into this group every morning and you do the yoga session and you spend a little time breathing and recuperating as you have the ability to do so, and you eat a little bit better. And these herbs that we're talking about today will help push all that. You'll see results a lot faster. But if you try to do this in a vacuum and you just go buy a supplement and you try to take it and that's the end of it, you're not going to see, you're going to be like, Larabeth lied. There's none of this matters, but it does if you do it in a holistic approach.
Yes, absolutely. I love that you pointed that out, because it is body, mind, and spirit, right? We have to totally tune in to all levels, and we can't just, I mean, we live in a culture that's like pop a pill.
Yeah. Now, the name of the adaptogen that's used is called rhodiola, and I think it's spelled RHODIOLA. Iola, if I remember correctly, rhodiola.
Yeah, that's a good one. So we use ashwagandha a lot in Ayurveda. It's an Ayurvedic herb originating from India, and it is a great. So just to give a little more Ayurvedic information, it's one of the best. Like you said, Larabeth, it's a kind of an umbrella adaptogen, and it is really helpful for anything having to do with a vata imbalance. So when there's too much air and ether element and we need to bring in some earth, we use ashwagandha, and that's kind of all of us right now. We live in a very vata aggravated world where we're multitasking. There's a lot of sensory input. Our nervous systems are on overdrive, not to mention, global pandemic and stressful election and all sorts of things. So ashwagandha is really helpful. And like you said, it helps us adapt. I will put a little caveat out there that it is in the nightshade family. And I have had clients that have reacted if they have a nightshade allergy, that ashwagandha can sometimes be an allergen. Most people are totally fine taking it. And even at high doses, it's been shown to be as effective as taking SSRIs for anxiety. However, it is good to work with a practitioner, like Larabeth said, so that you're having somebody guide your journey. I also use ashwagandha quite a bit to help people wean off of medications, to get their system supported enough that they no longer need certain medications, whether it's blood pressure medication or a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, what have you. And so Betsy just says, I grow holy basil, which is an adaptogen. Yes. Yeah, let's talk about holy basil.
I did want to make one more caveat on the whole. You will see a lot of the times, for those of you who maybe have autoimmune issues, you will see blanket statements that everyone with an autoimmune issue cannot touch nightshades. And that is not the case. So again, when you're getting into that kind of stuff, it's time to see a practitioner, because matter of fact, somebody spooked my husband off of nightshades. He has Crohn's, and it was this huge thing to try to get him to touch tomatoes again. And once he did, there was a lot of stuff that came back in balance. So if you do know you have that, then yes, definitely avoid it. But if you've just been told that because you have an autoimmune disease, you must avoid nightshades, that's not necessarily good advice. So yes, holy basil. Betsy says, I grow holy basil. Yes. So Tulsi is another favorite of mine. Oh, I have one more thing about ashwagandha. Yes. Y'all, there's so many things. The other thing I was going to mention, you were talking about how it has that earth feel to it. Ashwagandha also originated in parts of Africa, and there are African healing systems that utilize ashwagandha, and it's a very grounding herb from that angle as well. And of course, part of that's because it's the root, but yes, there's a very grounding effect that we see throughout several cultures that have used it. Sorry, Betsy, I don't mean to keep putting you off. There's so many things. But yes, I love holy basil. I like having holy basil in a tea. The holy basil is also really, really good as a tincture. This is one of those that you'll find me using as a tincture a lot of the time. It's very balancing, and we like it here in Alabama some summers. It's weird. Sometimes it'll explode and sometimes it won't. And if you are a gardener and you're looking to grow some different herbs, I encourage you to play around with it with stuff that will grow in your area. And even if it doesn't grow really well one year, it may grow well another year. And we see that, for instance, my lemon balm this year, even though it's always grown really well, it is literally propagated across my garden. I have had 6 or 7 little clumps pop up this year, and it makes sense with what we've got going on.
Right. We need it.
So yeah, at the risk of sounding super woo-woo here, there are times where it's almost like I don't know if it's the weather or the energy patterns or the Schumann resonance. I don't know what it is, but plants seem to be able to kind of recognize when they need to be more fruitful.
Absolutely.
And there are times where we have certain herbs, when my rosemary gets really big, I know okay, something's coming. I'm going to need this to be able to keep myself focused and grounded. And of course, this year with the lemon balm, all I've been doing all summer is cutting it and drying it. And of course, now we've got a lot for teas for what we're dealing with now. So when you have something like holy basil that grows really well for you, Betsy, like use that to your heart's desire. If you find something that grows well specifically for you, even if nobody else around you can grow it, that's probably one of your, allies, one of the plants that you probably need on a regular basis.
Yeah. We had that with mullein this year, which is such a respiratory support,
Yep.
and I was like, this is so interesting. The mullein is huge and just prolific this year.
Awesome.
And here we are having a pandemic that at least initially was a respiratory issue. It seems to be mutating, but
Well, yeah, but the other piece to that is that the respiratory system in traditional Chinese medicine, which I know is kind of coming out of scope here, but in traditional Chinese
all
medicine,
related.
the respiratory system is where we hold our grief.
Right.
And there's been a lot of grieving this year for like people who are passing or for the way of life. You hear people talk about the new normal or like having the unprecedented is like the word of the year. And there's a lot of grief around like people losing their livelihoods, not knowing what they're going to do, or just not being able to see family members. So like that makes sense that a lot of the respiratory herbs are exploding, even though COVID has an aspect that's respiratory, there's also that grief pattern as well.
Yeah, great point. Totally true. Yeah. Well, holy moly, we have talked for half an hour. We probably could talk for about a few more hours.
Keep going.
Yeah. Well, tell people where they can find you if they want to work with you more or find out more about what you do.
So I am known as the Empathic Herbalist. So if you go to empathicherbalist.com, you'll find some of my information there. I also have a Facebook page, Empathic Herbalist, or you can follow me on Instagram at Empathic Herbalist.
Awesome. And Larabeth is part of our group. So if you have questions for her after this interview, you're watching the replay, #replay, you can post questions and she will see them.
Yeah.
We hope. Yeah.
Tag me in them if you want. My name is Larabeth Guthrie on Facebook. So if you tag me in them, I'll see them and I'll be glad to respond.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I love talking with you. It's so fun. Yeah, Tina said that was the fastest 30 minutes. Yeah. Well, wonderful. So don't be afraid of herbs, you all. Go out and try making some remedies. Really trust that intuition and I love that invitation that you gave us all. Just like, see what tastes good to you. So go explore, use all these herbs that, are coming in now. Holy basil is such a great one for this time of year. So much support. It's warming and supportive for the immune system. So perfect one to end on. Thank you so much, Larabeth. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. Really grateful for you sharing with us.
All right. Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.